Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's public meeting on, got many things on the agenda tonight that I'm sure you're all interested in. We're going to start it out with a moment of silent prayer. I'd like to move on to pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Next item up on the agenda is a public hearing. I'd like to ask we have a motion to go into the public hearing. So moved. Have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. We're now in the public hearing. I'd like to start it out with comments. The first one up is Jason Watlington.
Chairman Dickerson, Commissioners, Manager Miller. My name is Jason Watlington. I'm the Deputy Director of Emergency Services. And on behalf of Emergency Services, I would like to thank the board for all your long hours, your intense debates, and personal sacrifices that you make, whether it be your job or family, to complete this budget that you feel is best for employees of Castle County as well as our citizens. Public safety across the nation is suffering tremendously, and I regret to say that the future continues to look very bleak. Wage wars within the EMS industry are causing counties to lose their entire services, while hospitals are devouring the workforce with pay rates and work schedules that are much more enticing. Surrounding law enforcement departments and 911 centers are feeling the same pressures. We fully support our sheriff and our 911 director and their efforts to retain and rebuild their staff as we are a public safety team. Thank you for recognizing this and approving a budget that helps to combat our problems. Each of our public safety departments have different needs. As for emergency services, this increase will allow us to better compete with our neighboring counties, but most importantly, helps us to retain the 29 great employees that have worked so hard to fill 24-hour shifts, 7 days a week, and providing life-saving medical treatment to the citizens of Castle County. I assure you that we are always striving to find ways to be more efficient, and we will continue that. Our increased generated revenue this year is a direct reflection of the emergency services providers, their timely and accurate documentation, and the increased number of calls that we ran. Again, we thank you. We are dedicated to this county and its citizens, and nothing warms my heart more than to be able to increase their wages to help them on a personal level, as well as to keep a very valuable group of people employed in Castle. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Brittany White.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brittany White. I reside at 678 Walker's Mill Road in Providence, and I'm currently a full-time employee at Castle County. I come before you tonight to speak on the budget ordinance you will be voting on shortly. Every EMS employee in Castle County has had hundreds of hours of classroom and clinical training. Some have worked shifts that have lasted the same as the average person's work week. And we've all spent countless nights, holidays, birthdays, and special occasions away from our families. As we continue to do it because EMS is truly a calling. There's something very special to me about being the best advocate for my patients and their families in the place I now call home. We have the greatest number of employees that live in Castle County since 2008, maybe earlier. But it should also be recognized that many of our employees make the drive to Castle from other counties because they truly love it here and serve in this community. However, I think it is safe to say that none of us do it for the money and never had any ideas of getting wealthy in this profession. We are very appreciative of the salary increase that is in this budget ordinance for public safety employees. This increase puts us to where we can see the proverbial taillights of surrounding counties in regards to salaries. We have continued to see frequent turnover rates in EMS and public safety as a whole in Castle County. EMS is losing providers to high-paying ER jobs in neighboring counties that offer much higher salaries for the same certifications and training that we have. We're not looking to be paid a similar wage to the busier, more populated areas. All we have asked for is to bring home a living wage that is commensurate to the job duties we perform on a daily basis. And we thank you for your efforts to make this happen. Again, I would like to say thank you to the commissioners that have supported public safety when we have needed it the most. No one wants to burden a taxpayer with any type of increase, but the real burden would be that the citizens would not have the appropriate resources available to them in their time of need. No one ever thinks that they will need us at any given moment in time until they do. So in closing, I hope that the board will continue to work together to make much needed improvements to ensure that we are able to provide the citizens with the best care possible. The citizens of this county deserve to have a motivated team that is treated well, paid fairly, and appreciated. Because one day it may be me that needs help. One day it may be my daughter, it may be one of you, or one of the needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Clint Gilbert, Senior.
Chairman Dickerson, commissioners, it's a pleasure to be up here. Thank you for allowing me to come up and speak. So I'm here on the two capacities, really. The first is as a resident and a business owner living and working here in Castle County. And the second is to represent law enforcement officers who are members of Castle County's chapter of the Fraternal Order of Police. Since I'm the president, I figured I might want to come out here and voice my opinions and represent them. So first, let's just talk about as me being here as a resident and business owner. So I live here, I work here, I play here, mostly play these days, but it's all right here in Castle County. And I'd like to share with everyone that I believe our county is being well managed. So I want to thank the commissioners for doing a great job. I mean, it's a challenge. You guys are stretching our tax dollars. And I think you're reaching everybody who needs the money the most, resources the most. So if somebody hasn't come out already and told you that, I think you're doing a great job. There's a lot of reasons why I picked Castle County to live, and especially North Carolina, but Castle County in particular. But I have to remind everybody that there are three services that we totally rely on. I think every citizen relies on these services in the county. Now, I homeschool my kids and I live on a private road, so I don't ask for a lot from the county. But there are three things that I really think always should be at the forefront of our budget: emergency medical services, fire support, and law enforcement. And those things, I don't think we can compromise on them. There's a lot of places, a lot of people pulling for different budget requests, but I think those things really have to be at the front. If we lose that, we do a disservice, not to just a small group of community members, but to the entire population of our county. So I ask the commissioner to always keep those essential services in the forefront of each year's budget so that they are well maintained and well funded. So secondly, as representing the officers from the Fraternal Order of Police, I'd like to thank the commissioners for proposing the increase in their salaries. I mean, it's important to share with everybody that while it's wonderful to have the lowest taxes of all the surrounding counties, it makes for a difficult challenge. It makes for a difficult challenge for you, the commissioners, in retaining qualified and technically proficient support. This is really important. We have to keep our fire on. We have to keep our police officers and our EMS crews. So the annual pay disparity, and some might not know this, but it's nearing $10,000 when a police officer or an EMS technician or a firefighter can go 10 more minutes down the road and get a $10,000 pay raise. That's quite the incentive. It almost comes out to $1,000 a mile. So, and I always, as a recruiter years ago, I used to tell everybody, don't try to switch jobs if it's not at least a $10,000 pay increase. Well, that's the situation that you're confronting. I think the adjustments in their salaries is well needed. This year is absolutely well needed. We have to retain the best of the best. We have to support Sheriff Tony Durden, and we have to support our firefighters and our EMS people here to make sure that our citizens get first dibs on qualified and professional services that they pay for out of the taxpayers. As a taxpayer, for me, that's the only thing I ask for. If I have a 911 function, that means I need help. I can't do it myself. And that is something that I expect the commissioners to fully evaluate from year to year. That's what I ask you. Besides that, on behalf of the FOP and on behalf of myself as a resident and business owner, I just want to say thank you so much for what has been done and what is being proposed for this budget. Rome wasn't built in a day. Keep up the work. Hopefully next year. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other people present that want to speak at the public hearing before we go to public comments? Okay, the next up to speak is Sherry Corner. This one, are you commenting on the budget?
Yes,
You are. Go right ahead.
Mr. Chairman, board members, my name is Sherry Pointer. I'm a former retired, I am a retired educator from Castle County Schools, but I am here on behalf of the Sheriff's Department. And I'd like to just make some quick comments. Since I live in Samora, most of you know where Samora is. You know, it's a good ways from Yanceyville. We had an event that brought home to us what living on the one end of Jack Corner Road is all about. And I'm here just to encourage you to consider what your priorities are. I know you have to spread this budget over a good span of needs for Castle County. But when you look at the number one priority, what is it? For us in our community, I think many of us believe that one priority should be the safety of the citizens. So I hope you will take that in consideration when you approve this budget, because getting qualified deputies, keeping them, recruiting them is just difficult with the status of the salary and the benefits at this point. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. There are two more individuals signed up for comments. So it's Tony Kirby and can't make out the last one. Chad Owens from Reedsville, North Carolina, maybe. Are y'all going to comment on the public hearing, or are your public comments on another topic?
To say.
Okay, all right. Mr. Tony Kirby will be up next.
Evening to you all. I stand here today as a 30-year law enforcement vet. I served in the upper administration of an upper department. However, I started my career right here in this county. 4 years in the United States Army, and then 9 years here as a deputy sheriff. And I left here and I went to another agency and climbed the ladder to a deputy chief position, where I sat on the back side of
budget planning sessions, strategic planning sessions, the whole 9 yards. So understand the painstaking efforts that you make. You look at the overall budget, try to decide how to deal out that money. I made several notes. I didn't prepare a speech for you tonight because I'm going to speak to you as a practitioner, now as a civilian living in this community. Mr. Dickerson, when you were campaigning, you sat in my shop with a guy that would bring me around. I asked you a couple of pointed questions related to your support for law enforcement, your conservative values, that kind of thing. I recall it vividly. So I want to make a couple of points tonight that hopefully will inspire all of them. I'm sure the sheriff gave you a staff analysis, and it was based on the crime index, both perceived and actual. We stand on the verge of seeing a casino built in Danville, which has already increased the vehicle volume in 80 cities substantially. We agree with that. When this casino is built, what do we expect to see as a result of it? Well, I can tell you the crime index for our county is going to go up. I can tell you that the vehicle accident ratios are going to go up, because any facility that offers that kind of service, the collateral impact of that is certainly crime. And proximity in and of itself is enough to justify a legitimate concern by not only our governing board, but every citizen that lives in proximity to it. I asked myself, what kind of strategic analysis this guy's done? I asked myself, what kind of strengths and weaknesses and opportunities related for Davenport County and the Board of Commissioners. I asked myself, what economic development opportunities have been proposed and what have been missed. I asked myself, from a personal perspective, what am I willing to do to defend my family? 2 years ago, well, actually 3 years ago, just a couple of years after I retired, after investigating crime, after dealing with anything and everything you could think of a 30-year career, I became a victim. First time. Never anticipated it, didn't see it coming. Just like you, went to work, came home, ate supper, bam, 2 o'clock in the morning. I live in Cherry Grove. A guy from Danville on Cherry Street, Danville, comes to my house to break into my shop. I went out to detain him. My wife picked the phone up. The sheriff's office was there in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 3 of them. Sergeant Jackie Little was the first one on scene. They did an outstanding job. Professional, courteous, polite, efficient. Changed my whole viewpoint. Thought to myself, in all the years I've done this job, I've never been a victim, so to speak. Surely I've been hit, certainly I've been in fights, certainly I've had guns pointed at me and everything else. But that was the first time I was ever a targeted victim. I wonder how many of you have been. Have you ever experienced what the psychological impact of being a victim is? And are you prepared to be? Because essentially, if you continue not to fund emergency services in this county, you will be eventually. Statistics say you will, not me. Statistical data proves you will.
We're at 3 minutes. Check, we're at 3 minutes. So if you want to ask, maybe wrap it up.
Mr. Kirby, could you wrap it up pretty quickly?
I thought it was 5 minutes.
It's 3.
About 3 minutes.
Okay,
I apologize.
all right. Okay, so I understand you got a 1 point whatever fine in your budget. I don't know, whatever, 1.4 million, 1.5 million. You know, maybe that money can be used to start a retention strategy. Maybe that money could be used to say, you know what, we're going to invest X amount of dollars into the resources of our county. EMS, fire, sheriff's office. Because to me, I'm just like the other speakers that have spoken in this room. My top priority is keeping my family safe. And I'm willing to make national news if that needs to happen. But I can tell you right now, the accountability falls on the front.
Yes,
Accountability falls on the board.
please wrap it up, sir.
Okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you, sir. Next up, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, hard for me to make it out. Chad Owens, is Reese, welcome up here.
Mr. Dickerson, commissioners. As well as Mr. Kirby, I'm a 33-year full-time retired law enforcement officer. Lived in Rockingham County all my life. Retired and did some work for sheriff during part-time. Sold everything I had in Rockingham and bought a farm here in Castle. Moved here. I'm one of you. This county is doing the best they can, funds they have. They can't keep anybody because of pay scales. Law enforcement, EMS, 911, and it indirectly affects these volunteer fire departments. These funds are not there to provide services that are needed to keep people. These firemen need help when they're on calls. I did that for 27 years. I was fire chief in Williamsburg. You need the funding for these sheriff's deputies, the EMS, and the 911. And I beg you, please, pay them to keep it. They're so far down now, it's working these folks to death. These are services that we have got to have. Our protection, your protection for the public. Our sheriff is doing the very best he can do with what he got. He needs some additional funds to keep these people that protect us. Thank you.
Comments before we close the hearing now. There being none, I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Motion to it. Second. And we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, likewise. Motion carries. We're now out of public session. Next up would be recognitions. Any of the board of commissioners have anyone they'd like to recognize? To the approval of the agenda. So, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Approval of the consent agenda. That consists of the June 5th, 2023 regular meeting minutes and the 2023 budget amendment number 10. Mr. Miller, could you elaborate on the budget amendment 10?
Yes, this budget amendment does two things. It makes it more clear what our intent is to do with the ARPA money, and that intent is to use this to support broadband activities within the county. The board will remember you authorized $600,000, $250,000 ARPA money for the great grant, and an additional $350,000 for the CAB program that has yet to be released from the state. So it increases sales tax, Medicare hold harmless funds, and it decreases the transfer from the ARPA funds in the amount of $351,354.14. As you can see in the expenditures, revenue replacement is increased, and we've talked about revenue replacement a number of times. Increased by $351,354.14, and then you have the transfer to the general fund of $351,354.14. So it's a net transfer.
Okay, we need an approval of the consent agenda. What is the pleasure of the board? Move to approve. All those in favor say aye. Opposed likewise. Motion carries. Discussion items. Next up is a proposal for naming the bridge after Chief Deputy Michael Atkins. Mr. Miller.
Commissioners, we've received a proposal for naming or renaming a bridge after Chief Deputy Michael Atkins, who recently passed. Chief Deputy Atkins served the residents of Castle County for 28 years and retired with over 30 years of credible service. He also served as the county's dare officer for many years and impacted the lives of many of our children. Within his career, Chief Atkins served at one time as the board president of the North Carolina Dare Officers Association. At the time of his passing, he was the North Carolina Dare coordinator. Law enforcement officers or a requested honoree have to be deceased for at least 1 year to get pending approval with a one-time administrative fee of $2,000 for the signs, including strong local community support, family support, and strong credential and achievement support locally, through the state or nationally. I will say that there are plans to do fundraising events to provide for the administrative fee of $2,000. The ideal location for the bridge naming will be the closest location where Chief Atkins lived for 2/3 of his career, which is the bridge at Finch Road where the road crosses Birch Creek. We would ask that you authorize staff to prepare a resolution of support for the renaming project to be presented to NCDOT upon request.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Next up is item number 9. Home consortium agreement. Mr. Miller.
Commissioners, on March 6, Matthew Doles, the executive director of the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, spoke to the board about becoming part of the home consortium. The consortium allows the entity, being the consortium, to collect money directly from HUD and apply to projects, that funding to projects in the areas covered by the consortium. The money, it adds flexibility to the money and allows us to use it in different ways than we could otherwise. It really allows us to use it for whatever housing needs the members of the consortium feel like that they need to address. So Rockingham, Caswell, Alamance, Burlington, Randolph, and Davidson counties have all been asked to join the consortium. And at this point in time, they believe all those counties will join. This consortium would generate just over $2 million a year that could go for projects within the members' areas. How we work, or how PTRC works the consortium is that every member, being the county or jurisdiction, appoints 2 people to sit on the board. PTRC brings the projects forward and administers the projects, but they don't make many of the funding decisions to go along with those projects that they bring forth. All of the decisions are made by the membership, which are usually made up of county managers, elected officials, or a private citizen from each of the counties that are appointed by the Board of Commissioners. So finally, I'll say there's no cost to the county to join the consortium. The only requirement is that we have 2 members that are willing and able to attend the meetings as required.
The funding decisions. Could you explain a little bit more about how that's made?
So yeah, the members of the consortium make the funding decisions. So the consortium believes they'll be awarded just a little over $2 million every year. So they may choose one big project in Alamance County this year. and then several other small projects in other jurisdictions to go along to spend the $2 million. And that's voted on by the members of the consortium. So the next year,
Is each county equally represented?
yes, to some degree. And I want to just throw that out there. There is a caveat that each county gets 2 representatives. So, but you'll see, I said Alamance and Burlington. So Burlington is the lead fiduciary entity for this project. So the money flows in and through Burlington. And they're also the jurisdiction that has to sign their name to every one of these grants and every one of these projects. So, so in theory, yes, but in reality, yeah, maybe not. So
Alamance, the big chunk of it.
So I was explaining the way they do that funding is Alamance may get a big project this year. Other jurisdictions may get smaller projects. Next year, it may, the big project may be awarded to a different county, and smaller projects go to the other counties. And the way it was explained to me is in the current consortium that they have in Surrey County. I think Surrey's the lead agent for that. The big project kind of rotates every year to another county. So that kind of ensures that every county receives that big pot of money at some point.
What is the benefit for that group for Castle County being in it? Our membership that add money into that pot, is that where part of it $2 million a year?
It does. So it's based per capita. So any count, they have to be, the counties have to be contiguous, which we are contiguous with all of those jurisdictions. And it's per capita. So the more people they have, the more money they receive. Castle County's not a huge county. That's one of the reasons that we can't draw the money down from HUD ourselves the same way the consortium can. So having said that, yes, they get more money because we're in there, but not a great deal because it's per capita.
So us being in helps them to get more money, but if we're not in, we have no say so in how the money would be allocated. Even if we come in and get outvoted, we're better off to be members and at least have some funding coming back.
You're exactly right.
Are there any other questions on the board?
How often do they meet?
So the consortium hasn't been formed yet. I think early on, I think you may meet more often. After that, I would anticipate quarterly.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to note that the agreement before you tonight is a 3-year commitment to the consortium. So the commitment, should you choose to join, would be a commitment till September 30th, 2027 to participate in the consortium. And at that time, if the county wanted to go its separate ways, it could. But I just wanted to point that out. There is a 3-year term here.
Mr. Farrell, is there any downside that we're not seeing? Anything that could go wrong?
Right. Well, there's a hold harmless provision in the agreement. So as you band together for these projects, if one jurisdiction doesn't meet its funding obligations, as you know, most of these grants come with a matching component, and that will still apply. And the agreement provides that each jurisdiction that's responsible for its match must pay those monies in order to receive the benefits. So there's an obligation there that each jurisdiction participates financially to the extent of its match. And again, I think the largest thing that jumped out at me in the agreement was this 3-year commitment to give this a try for a number of years before you could go a different direction. So, I think that it takes some of the administrative burden off Caswell County to administer its own grants. That's a benefit. And then the pooling of resources that you see there. The agreement is fairly straightforward otherwise, but it would commit Caswell County to fulfill its matching obligation should it receive a project coming from the consortium.
Thank you.
So I'll just add to that. County attorney mentioned the match and I said no cost to the county. So let me explain to you how that works. PTRC provides weatherization grants to residents of Caswell County and all the counties in its jurisdiction every year. Those grants usually total somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000. That along with the private match that would be associated with any project would meet the county's funding responsibility, which I think the max, I don't remember what the max was, but that will meet the county's max obligation for the funding requirement. That's the reason that there's no cost to the county. That's met through current PTRC program.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
When you say grants are always scary to me. My best friend handled the grants for Greensboro Police Department. Grants always sound good first year and then they drop down and then you're left holding, you've got something started, you've got to pay for it. What kind of things are they doing? Is it something that we would, is it a one-time deal that are we doing a house or doing a renovation, or is this something we're starting a program and then we're going to end up picking up the money after that grant runs out?
So no, this money doesn't, number one, doesn't flow through the county. So it doesn't flow through our books. We don't administer it.
But if it was our turn, it was a grant.
So if it were your turn, which I don't ever, I would imagine that Burlington will always be the lead entity as long as the consortium is together. That kind of transfer just doesn't happen. The lead agency remains the lead agency. That's number one. So the county would never be on the hook for whatever went wrong, because if something were to go wrong, because as I said, we're not signing that paperwork. It's Burlington as the lead entity that's signing that paperwork and administering along with PTRC the grant and grant funding. And just to add, this is kind of the beauty of the program too, is you ask about what we would be doing. There's some flexibility with it. So yes, you could have new affordable housing projects or new affordable housing within the county or within the town. You could have low income housing. You could have renovation. There are some guidelines that you have to follow, but the consortium follows those guidelines. Those guidelines aren't left up to this board, and the board doesn't follow those. Whoever's applying for the money has to apply to Burlington and to PTRC for the money. They don't apply.
Does it put any funding that the county currently receives in jeopardy?
This is additional funding that we would usually have to apply for and jump through a lot of hoops to be able to get. It allows us to simply draw that funding down from the state rather than having to apply.
And just one follow-up on the manager's comment there about the lead agency. The way the agreement is structured, the members of the consortium agree that they'll reimburse the lead agency for any in full for any expenses that the lead agency incurs as a result for its financial management of the program. The agreement further provides that if that expense results from the acts or omissions of one jurisdiction, say they failed to submit reports that are required for the grant, as an example, that the member agency that has failed to provide the necessary information will take the fiscal responsibility for that solely. But there is, because the Burlington's going to be the administrator, they do have in this agreement that they'll be made whole if there's any loss associated with their work. They'll essentially be looking to the members for a contribution, but to the extent that the loss is a result of one member's actions, that member would have to cover those costs. So just a little bit of a nuance on the manager's comments there.
Would you anticipate fees like that would be?
It's, obviously the grants have a number of compliance requirements. And so it just depends on what the nature of the compliance issue was, right? Failure to record keep, could result in a repayment, something like that. But again, the agreement provides that if the repayment obligation is the result of one or more jurisdictions themselves, that those jurisdictions will be the ones to have to pay in. But there is this, sort of group commitment that the fiscal agent won't bear the costs themselves.
Any other questions or comments?
Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept this.
Have a motion, and we have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, or do y'all want to do the roll call voting? Let's do the roll call. Let's start out with Mr. McVeigh.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
Mr. Finch.
No.
No. I vote no. Yarborough.
Aye.
Finch.
Aye.
Motion carries. Board and committee appointments. Next up on the agenda, item number 10, Mr. Miller.
Commissioners, you have several committees that you need to make appointments to tonight. We'll just go down the list if that pleases the board. So the first one is easy. You have the Agricultural Advisory Committee. You've received no application, so no appointment is needed. But we do have 3 vacancies, and I'd like to point that out to the members of the public that there's many of these boards and committees that we need members for, and we need applications. So if that's something that interests you, please contact our clerk, Carla Smith, to make application. So the next is the Board of Adjustment. We have 2 members, Stephen Barman and Nikki Turner. We have 2 applications, and they're Stephen Barman and Nikki Turner.
You need a motion?
I do.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor of appointing Stephen Boltman and Nikki Turner to the Board of Adjustments, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
So commissioners, we have the Board of Health. We have 2 members terming out, Carol Commande and Amanda Everett. We've received 2 applications, Michael Commande and Alexia K. Watland.
We can be appointed. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, we have the Casual Adult Advisory Council. We have 1 vacancy. We've received 1 application, Sylvia Banks. We do have we have 6 members terming this time. So we could really use applications for the Casual Adult Advisory Council, but we do have 1 application, Miss Sylvia Banks.
Have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, next we have Farmer Lake. We have 2 current members, Kenneth Travis and Steve Eaton. We have received 4, those 2 members are terming out. We have received 4 applications: Steve Eaton, Kenneth Bowles, David Owen, and Stephen Howard Jr.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recommend Kenneth Bowles and David Owen.
I have one recommendation for Kenneth Bowles and David Owen. Anyone else on the board have anything they'd like to add? Anybody like to, okay, there's no one else. We have a motion to appoint Kenneth Bowles and David Owen. Do I have a second? Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, next we have the Gun Memorial Library Advisory Board. We have 2 current members that are terming out, and that's Betsy Watlington, Mark Hughes. We have we've received 1 application from Allison Bowles.
Will be appointed. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, next we have the Person Lake Authority. We have 1 member terming. And we've received 1 application. Barry Joyce is the member terming. He's also the person we received the application. You skipped.
You skipped a page.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Heritage and Cultural Preservation. So our current members are Donna Maskell, that are terming are Donna Maskell, Robert Neal, Kenneth Underwood, and Bruce Clayton. We've received 1 application, and that's Robert Neal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, on the Jury Commission, we have 3 members terming: Ethel B. Gwynn, Lynn Massey, Diane Moorfield. We've received 1 application, and that's Miss Ethel B. Gwynn.
Have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, next we have the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. Current members terming are Brenda Day and Aisha Gwynn. And we've received no applications, so no appointment needed. So now we'll move on to the Person Lake Authority. Current members terming Barry Joyce, applications received, 1 Barry Joyce.
Be appointed. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Recreation Commission, 2 vacancies, no applications received, no appointment. Senior Center Advisory Committee, we have 1 member terming. We have 2 vacancies. The member terming is Gene Vernon. The applications we have received are Alexia K. Watlington and Ethel Gwynn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, next, and I think it's last, we have the Tourism Development Authority. We have 2 members terming, Karen Ostreicher and Mr. Ahmed. We have received 1 application from David Owen.
Second.
Commissioners, I'll just say, we need to check the authority to have Commissioner or former Commissioner Owen as a member of that committee. There's a certain makeup that has to be made or followed by the board. And I just need to make sure that we're still following in that makeup of the board. So many of the members have to be members that collect the tax. So many of the members have to be engaged in tourism related activities. And then I believe there's another caveat to that, but I'm happy to bring that back to the board at our next meeting.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, next up, number 11 is the budget ordinance. And before we begin, I would like to ask the members of the board to be recognized by the chair before we comment on this. That way we won't have anybody talking over another commissioner and be an orderly discussion. And I would like to start this off by throwing out a few things on this issue that I feel like needs to be stated. In the budget as presented, there's a $2,547,000 shortfall for this year's budget. That equates to a 14.7 cent tax increase or a 20% increase if implemented next year to cover this. That reasoning is 173,650 per penny times 14.7 gives you a little over the $2.5 million mark. After removing this from the fund balance of $2,547,000, we will be at roughly $3.3 million. If we fall below roughly $1.3 million, we go below the state mandated level. If that happens, the state can step in. Now, my thoughts on this, 3 cents of this is directly attributed to the Board of Education. 1.9 cent for that figure is to pay for the new high school, which was not implemented in this budget. In addition to that is 1% for additional spending that totals $179,000 in addition to the monies that they currently get, which is roughly $465,000 in one category and 2. Bear with me just a second. I flip back. 2.655 million in another category, and that's on page 15 of the management recommended budget. I would counter that giving them an additional $179,000 on top of the increase for the new high school and the money that they're already getting is a little excessive. We're going into their fund balance instead of the school system using their fund balance for the $179,000 they're requesting. How much do they have in their fund balance? $2.1 million. My understanding is the balance this year's budget would be taking almost $2.6 million from our fund balance. That's the savings accounts. That's to cover the true cost of this budget without passing along the cost to the taxpayers of the increase this year. Where will the money come from to cover the money next year, especially if we go into a recession and tax revenue falls? Revenues are supposed to match expenditures. Roughly $1.7 million in this year's budget is not covered. That $1.7 million in reoccurring spending equals roughly a 10-cent tax increase liability or a 13.6% tax increase. If we take this money out and something happens like a natural disaster and we fall below the 8% mark and the state steps in, we're in trouble. We're spending about $400,000 or so on the HVAC unit at the college. So it's not hard to imagine a scenario where we have an emergency happen and we have to spend $200,000. That would take us from that 3.3 down below that 3.1. It's actually a little lower than 3.1, but I'm using rough figures. We have to remember something else. Not only are we cutting it close on that, but when the reevaluation comes in next year and we ask for a steep increase to cover all the spending, we are the Board of Equalization and Review. If we pass either scenario of a 13.6 to a 20% tax hike next year to cover all this, the citizens will be outraged and they will be here demanding answers and contesting the reevaluation right here before us. And lo and behold, I would not want to be anybody working in the tax office the day after the bills come out. I think I'd use a sick day, I honestly do. Schools unassigned fund balance, keep this in mind, is $2.1 million. We're providing $329,940 of taxpayer money to pay for the new high school. Those payments go on for years. That's going to require a 1.9 cent tax increase. Should we really be giving them another $179,000 out of the fund balance when they have money there in their own fund balance? I want to point out something else. School system, unlike the county, they have 2.1 million in that fund balance that they can use, but they are under no mandated minimum, but as they have no taxing authority. We on the other hand do. So we're cutting ourselves within $200,000 of the state stepping in for them to maintain a $2.1 million fund balance. Just doesn't it doesn't ring true with me. For clarification, the pay for the 1.7 million is recurring expense in this budget. It would require a 13.6% tax increase at 10 cents per hundred. We're currently bringing in property taxes. If I get my figures right, and we can ask Mr. Miller to clarify these for me because I am far from an accountant. We're currently bringing in 13,244,756. Increase of that rate would push us almost to 15 million, 14,944,756. I would respectfully ask this board that we go through this budget line item, except for the proposed raises. I want to make it clear. The raises have been proposed for the county employees and the EMS department. We should not be looking at those. We do need to have a quality department for public safety. I would have preferred to have raises and retention bonuses, but the way it worked out, I think everybody could agree we could leave that alone. But there are other items in here, as referenced by what I'm pointing at with school system. There's another item in there, $6,500 for a dark net for the animal control office, with vet fees to mix the tranquilizer proportions in that ongoing from now on. To sit here and just pass this budget without going through a line item is just inexcusable, and our duty as the gatekeepers for the county tax dollars. We need to be honest with the citizens and let them know what lies ahead in reference to the true cost of this budget and the consequences of the fund balance money to balance its budget. Using fund balance to pay for recurring expenses is like using your personal savings account to pay for your electric bill, grocery bill, etc. Sooner or later, you'll run out of money. Recurring expenses must be paid for with revenue. I have been complaining, and anybody that does not want to follow this train of logic thinks I'm shooting you something wrong. Go back and watch the meetings, look at the budget from last year. Commissioner McVeigh was chairman then, and Rick, you got to the point you looked at me and you knew, and you now knew before I ever voted on the line items. I have been a proponent of excessive spending with no way to pay for it. It's not that we don't need to spend money in the county, it's how do we pay for it? The COVID money is gone, people. The savings account is being drained down to a bare minimum. If the state steps in here, they take control of this ball of wax. We don't have to say so at that point. I've been complaining about a reckoning day coming for expensive spending, the use of COVID money and fund balance for years now. I said one day the COVID money would be gone and the savings would too. And then we would have to have a substantial tax increase to pay for all this. We need to take a look at this budget, line item by line item, and cut where we can. We're just choosing to kick the can down the road again and not pay for this budget. And that will mean a big tax increase next year. And I, for one, don't want to see that happen. Remember, we have many people in this county on fixed income that can't afford to pay more. We have until June 30th to pass this budget. And we can continue on after that with one we currently have until we can figure out what we need to do with this budget. Again, I'm not saying do anything different for the raises that we have proposed, but that's a large portion of those people here tonight. Leave them alone. That takes out a lot of these line item issues that I want to look at. A whole lot of this can be streamlined, but don't we owe it to the taxpayers to at least take a look at it and see if we can't save some money? I'm going to drop it with that, and I'm going to pass it on, but I do want to point out that there are uncollected EMS bills that we have not talked about. And when we went through line item, I wanted to talk about that as well. There should be more of an effort by the county if we have to bring in a third-party collection system to give that money that's owed to the county. I've talked with the EMS director. Where's Mr. Mitchell? You in here, Mr. Lynch? Yes, sir. So we've spoken about this several times, and I'd like to see that pursued. And the time to do that is when we were talking about this line item going forward, and I lost that opportunity. Every year since I've been on this board, We have never passed a budget, just, hey, here the whole thing is, pass it, yea or nay. We've always went back through and looked at the individual expenditures. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all I'm asking y'all to do here tonight. Leave the raises for our departments in check. But please don't pass this budget without going through it and looking at the individual. So with that said, I will turn it over for board comments and we can go forward.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if you remember the last month, we've been working, 2 months, we've been working on this budget, and particularly the last 2 meetings. I asked that we put the 1.9 cent in with the school system. I did not get any support from anyone. You, Mr. Finch, or anyone. Nobody supported that idea. So I have said to heck with it, and we will go with Mr. Yarborough.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Jones.
it's supposed to be back. It's just a third about, it's not Mr. Yarber's deal. Mr. Yarber made a motion.
Mr. Yarborough made the motion.
Okay, that's fine. Just to go back for a few minutes. Mr. Chairman, you made reference to the 2.5 million that this budget was drawing down out of the fund balance.
Yes, sir.
Looking back at historical numbers in 2020, 2.156 million out of the fund balance. 21, it was 1.793 million out of the fund balance. 22 was 1.967 million out of the fund balance. 23 was 1.235 million out of the fund balance. I say that to say this. Taking money out of the fund balance is not something new. This year is a larger draw than in previous years, but it's not something that the board hadn't been doing. They've been drawing money out of the fund balance every year for the budget. Every year that I can recall. And as far as the tax increase goes, I talked with Mr. Bernard, our tax director, today. We all know the revaluation is underway and will be finished sometime in the next few months, and we'll all get our letter telling us how wealthy we are with the property we own. And so I asked Thomas, I said, can you give me a percentage number of how things are shaking out? He said, from what they had seen so far, that values were going up anywhere from 25 to 50% plus. And some were going up as much as 100%. Now, rather than hitting the taxpayer with a whammy this year, and he's surely gonna get, he or she will surely get a whammy next year. We all know that. I think that the best time to address these budget shortfalls will be after this reevaluation ends, because we can talk about a revenue neutral budget all we want to, but it will not be neutral for you versus me versus Mr. Miller versus anybody in this room, because all of our values are not going to increase the same rate. If mine goes up 50%, yours may go up 100%. So no one will be paying the same tax for 24, when the tax bills come out next year. The tax bills will go up. Your neighbors might go up a lot more than yours, or vice versa. So I think that that is the time that we need to work on these numbers, if you want to call it that.
Mr. Yarborough. I'm writing pretty fast, kind of hard to keep up with the points here, but board, let me address what's been thrown back to me by Mr. McVeigh and Mr. Yarborough, and then I will give the rest of y'all ample time to speak. Rick, the 1.9 cent tax increase would have been addressed in a line item budget review when we started talking about the issues. If you didn't realize, every year I've been on this board since you've been chairman and before that, we did that every year. When we got to it during that time frame, we took a consensus of the board. The taxpayers voted for that. They voted for that new high school. I'm not against you on this at all. They asked for it, I would have approved it. Just saying that going forward. It's
Nobody
not,
mentioned that when I brought
it
it up.
is not prudent to take money out of fund balance for something we're gonna have to institute a tax increase for.
Tried to get the 1.9 put on. Nobody said anything.
And line item again. When we go through it by each issue going forward, that's when all that has always been hashed out.
Nobody said wait till line item.
There has
Nobody
always
said
been a
that.
wait, there has always been a wait for the line item. Have we ever, since been on here, had a budget where we just passed it sight unseen? That's like the federal government.
Yeah. All right, it don't matter.
All right, okay, you're right, correct, Mr. Yarborough. There's been fund balance taken out every year since I've been on board. If you go back and watch those videos, you'll see where I've complained about it repeatedly. Just like I'm complaining about this year, I'm just a little bit more vocal and loud about it this year. So I do not go with the fund balance being used. Fund balance should only be used in the case of one-time emergencies. Something goes wrong, county building catches on fire. That's the type of expenditure that's supposed to be for. The Yanceyville, to my knowledge, Yanceyville didn't take anything out of their fund balance to pay for recurring expenses. That's the kind of budget I'd like to see. Can we get there overnight? Probably not, but can we do better than what we've done? Absolutely. Waiting until the reevaluation and saying we got this big increase coming in property values, we're gonna take care of it. You can call it a reevaluation, you can call it outright tax increase. It still takes money out of the taxpayer pocket. And I don't want to see some of these folks that are struggling already to pay their bills get hit any harder than they're gonna have to be hit. If you remember when I was talking here, I have complained about this with the COVID money. I've complained about it with fund balance. Either way it goes, it's like raising your savings account or spending federal COVID dollars that aren't there. So I've said my piece, I made my stand. It's tax increase is a tax increase, either way you want to look at it.
Mr. Miller, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Miller, wasn't you directed by this board to bring back a packet with no increase in the budget? You had delivered a packet to us with an increase in the budget. Then you were directed by this board not to bring back a package with an increase in it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Miller, was that proposal that you were instructed to come back without an increase, was it not indeed part of a bigger motion and the original motion was pulled out and that just left bring us a budget with no tax increase? I guess that made your job just as easy as it could be, bro, because it was restrictions on the first one. And then the county attorney was referenced because myself and another commissioner had a disagreement over the procedure for withdrawing the motions. And it was deemed to be two separate motions. So that motion was basically sent to you to say, here, Mr. Miller, give us a budget. And here's a few caveats, but basically just give us something without a tax increase. But in reference to what it originally was, Mr. Jeffries made a motion that the original proposed budget would come back as it was presented to you with no tax increases for that budget. So it's disingenuous to say it was just that from the start. It's like it grew legs of its own and it came back as something other than what it was originally intended to be. I know I just threw a lot at you. Take a deep
So
breath.
Commissioner Coyle, I want to tell you, is on June 1st, I gave you my recommended budget.
Right.
I told you after I gave you my recommended budget, it was no longer my budget. It was your budget. We have done as we've been directed. We presented you a budget ordinance, the way we drew it up. So the way we were asked to draw it up. So we've done our work. The discussions between y'all are between y'all now.
Gotcha. Wise man. I don't blame you at all. I stepped back away from it as far as I
Yep.
could to. In the end, I'm gonna hold that. We haven't heard from the other members on the board. I'm curious as to what you members would like to say in this discussion.
I'd like to say that, like 90% of the people in here are something to do with EMS or law enforcement. This time next year, it's gonna be taxpayers. And they're gonna be mad. And I wouldn't be scared to say $3,000 to $5,000 per person is what taxes are gonna go. I'm sorry, can you get control of the crowd?
Good, ladies and gentlemen,
I didn't interrupt anybody when they were speaking.
We've had an issue here in the past, and I've been guilty myself, where things got out of hand and the discussion got sideways. Could you please respectfully let the board members speak in this deliberation? If we can't maintain order in here, we'll have to take another step. So please just sit here and listen quietly and show the same respect we showed each one of you as y'all chose to speak before us. Continue on, Mr. Holder.
It's gonna be paid $3,000 to $5,000, a lot of people. That's what's gonna go up. I would say $500 is gonna probably be the minimum your taxes will go up. So next year, yeah, I've heard a lot of insults. Even heard that, the commissioner said I was just a lie, that it's not a tax increase. So technically, yeah, it's not a tax increase. It's kind of like me going to buy a truck and going home and telling my wife it didn't cost anything because there was no money down. So, yeah, but it's gonna have to be paid for next year. And that's what it's gonna be. And it's gonna hurt next year.
Any other comments from any of the board members?
Chairman, I like to make comments, not a comment, but, I've been around for quite a while. We always had tax increases, always had not tax. Kansas County is like the lowest tax rate around, other towns around the county. Certainly might go up next year, but they always have been up and down, that's the way it is. 90% of the people in this room, I ain't heard a soul got up and said nothing like, I don't want my tax to go up. All I heard, safety. How if something happened, I want you there, We had a bad thing down in Jack Point Roads, the sheriff was there, but it was sad. It could be all over. Kansas County been good to say so far. The sheriff and the thing have did a good job. Do you want to have 2 sheriff or 4 or 5 sheriff here to take care of the county? Or do you don't want to have no EMS? I mean, you got to look at here. You can't keep saying that what we're don't want to do. We know we got to support EMS, sheriff, 911, because what are we going to do? We got nothing else to go on. Who pays that bill? It's a taxpayer. We don't have no taxpayers. Years ago, we had 650 people at the out there. We had Hanover. We had Gibson Mill. A lot of things was here. We don't have that anymore. So the burden will fall on taxpayers. Anyway, you can go ahead. I don't want to raise that. I guess I pay by much tax as the average person. But I don't want to. But I have to. But I want to protect you. Let's look at that. They had got up there and hollered by tax. I ain't heard a soul in here holler by tax. Nobody got up there and cried. So, we've been on this budget for a long time. I'm ready to pass the budget. And if people don't want us, they got a voting time to come up. They'll vote me out. They'll vote you out. Just like we want. That's all I got to say about it. Okay.
Mr. Jeffries, I don't think there's a single person on this board here tonight that does not support raises for these people sitting here and the rest of the county employees. I myself tried to get a higher rate of raise for the county employees than what they were given than the 4% they got. I figured during the negotiations, we would settle somewhere out below the 15% asked for the sheriff's department, but 13.5, it hit pretty close in there. I can live with that, and I think everybody on this board can. That's not the issue that we're bringing up tonight that I'm pushing. I would want to see us try to go back through this budget line item, leave the raises alone. Just look at the individual items. There are commissioners, one in particular on this board, that campaign on a line item budget review. I would love to see that happen for this board. I would love to go back and look. I don't see any reason we should be giving another $179,000 to the schools in addition to what we gave them last year and paying for the new high school over here. I think that is too much money. That's putting the burden back on the taxpayers. And if y'all gentlemen and ladies want to vote on this budget as a whole tonight, that'll be the priority of the board. But I wanted my conscience to be clear when to come in here and say, I support you. I want to give y'all raises, but this should not be just passed like a pig in a poke. Details need to be paid attention to. I gave a few examples. It would not take us that long to go through this budget, to cut out something. And every $179,000 issue, if we could find a few more things like that, every 173 we cut, it's 1 penny off that proposed tax increase. And that's what I would like to see happen. I'll go with this. I'll make a motion that we go back and go through the budget and we look at the other expenses besides the proposed raises. We leave those rates alone. That will take out a lot of the issues we're looking at. They'll all have the raises given to them. The benefits will correspond. That naturally kicks up with the rest of it. All we got to do is look at the other required amount or the requested amount, excuse me. I make a motion that we proceed down that avenue instead of passing the budget as a whole. Can I get a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion, a second to do a line item budget review and try to save the taxpayers some money on other items. Leave the raises alone intact like they are. I got a motion and a second. I would like to start off roll call voting.
We just ask for discussion.
Yes, sir. You're right.
Maybe I'm incorrect. I'm wrong more than I'm right most days. But weren't you in favor of a motion on Monday to use last year's budget, which is a higher dollar budget than this year's budget, with a 5% across the board for all county employees?
You're asking me a question?
Yes, sir.
Not when you take the COVID funds out.
I don't believe that was in your motion. Or in the motion that you supported.
That motion was pulled, wasn't it?
But you were in favor of it.
I was in favor of holding down spending, yes, sir. And you know what? You're trying to twist it now because you know the COVID money blew that apart. But when you pull it out.
You did not ask for any type of line item to go over that budget. And this is a new board. This board didn't go through that budget process last year.
Well, let's make it simple and not go back and forth. I'm asking for one now plainly. That's what I wanted all along. I expected there would be one because that's what's been done every year. Never have we ever did it any other way. Okay.
Further discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
It's, a stone was thrown at me when I ran. I did say line item budget. I was here at all full budget. I studied this budget. I went through this budget 3 times. We all gave recommendations to the county manager, what we wanted to see cut in open session. And I followed up with what was done in open session. I went through the budget. I was here when the department heads brought it in. I was here when everyone on brought it in and submitted everything they wanted. Then the county manager brought his budget back. And I believe the board directed the county manager, he went back again and cut the budget again. That's all I have to say on it.
Mr. Rose.
Again, this budget every year has been just like that. You haven't been on this board before, but you've been a member of the sheriff's department for years. You have seen it over and over again. It is standard protocol procedure that the budget is presented, department heads come in, you can ask questions, you talk in open, and that's where all this should be done, is in the open forum. None of this talking to the county manager about pet peeves and things you want in a budget and beyond the county doors. That should never take place. Everything we do should be right here. Right here where everybody in this county and the people watching at home can see what we're talking about. So no, I didn't reach out to the county manager for any of my personal pet peeves being displayed. No, anything I've said about it's been right here in reference to what I wanted in. All that aside, I'm not trying to pick a fight with you in here tonight. Yes, you did say when you were campaigning you wanted a line item budget. All I'm asking you to do is follow through with that, Mr. Burke. Let's do that. Let's do, that's the way that it's supposed to be. Everything you led up to that was preliminary. The line item is supposed to come up next, sir. That was all preliminary leading up to it. The raises have been settled. The compensation for the county employees have been settled. But issues like that system, that appointment, I can't even talk anymore. They got busted. the issues like the money going to the school system in addition to everything else they got. That's not fair to the taxpayers. If we could only cut out a handful of things like that, it would make a tremendous difference when it comes back around next year. You realize when we put that 179 in there, Mr. Rose, they get that every year from now, and you never see anything come back out of an appropriation like that. All I'm asking for is some common sense and a little time to go through this. We have till January 30th. June 30th. We do not have to do this tonight, pass through. Or if y'all prefer, you can pass it through and set the tax rate now. And we can still go back and look at these items afterwards. Am I correct in that, Mr. Miller?
I would imagine you can make budget amendments and decrease amounts.
Well, tell you what, let me just back up. I don't want to drag you in the middle of it. I've got a motion and a second, or is any more discussion about it?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
there weren't any pet peeves. What was discussed was taking two of Mr. Miller's recommendations for two positions. Out of the budget. Also one from solid waste out of the budget. So there was not, I didn't put anything into this budget. I made no bones about it. In our meetings, put anything into it. It was taken out of it.
How much trouble would it be to go back and play this commissioner's comments that were recorded and put it back out? I mean, I don't want to sit here and argue, Mr. Rose, but you made a comment, whoa, I'll let you speak, let me speak. You made a comment in this meeting, something to the effect of you had spoken with the county manager on the phone, talking about things concerning that budget with things you wanted to see in it. And you did that on camera, and then when I called you on it, you turned right back around and said you didn't say it. I'd love to see the video played back and let you explain that to us.
On the conversation that was taking place, but how it was brought up in open session about taking those two positions out, plus the solid waste. Solid waste does not come out of general fund. My question, Mr. Miller, was how much money that was going to save.
Again, I'm not gonna sit here and argue with you. I'd love to have that video to play right now. And we wouldn't even have to have this conversation.
You do the whole meetings that a lot of us were at, we wouldn't have to be here now.
No, 60 to 80 hours a week trying to put food on my family's plate. There's more people over here that was working, trying to put food on their family's plate. You wouldn't have all this on, sir.
You do that, you ran for the office.
And that's exactly what y'all want to see. You want to see this, and you know what, I'm not going to deteriorate into this, Rose. You got your opinion on it. Are there any more comments on the motion? There is a motion and a second on this. Are we going to go back and look at the line items and try to remove some of this spending to try to alleviate the coming tax increase and leave all of the compensation for the county employees as is? I'm going to call for a roll call voting, and I'm going to do something out of break precedent here. I'm going to ask myself to vote first. I say yes. Mr. Yarborough.
No.
Mr. Holt.
Yes.
Ms. Quinn.
No.
Mr. Rose.
No.
Mr. Jeffers. Mr. McVeigh.
No.
Motion fails. We are still on the discussion of the budget item. Budget ordinance, it's a pleasure of the board.
Move the budget ordinance as presented be approved.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the budget ordinance. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Well, again, we'll do roll call voting. And let's shake it up a little bit. Mr. McVeigh.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffers. Mr. Holt.
Aye.
Mr. Yarborough.
Aye.
Ms. Quinn.
Aye.
Mr. Rose.
Aye.
And I am a no. Motion carries. Budget ordinance is approved. Next up, we have the county manager updates.
Commissioners, I just want to make you aware of a couple things.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we'll take a break.
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break. What else?
Oh, No, sure, I got it.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back into session. County manager updates.
Commissioners, I have just a couple items that I want to bring to your attention. Number one, our planning director has written a grant for $4,500. It's to support ag preservation district signs for residents that wish to enroll in the ag preservation districts program. So we have received that grant, and I just ask that the board approve, accept us, allow us to accept that grant.
So moved. Got a motion, second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I do want to let the board know, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to let the board know that I have also written a grant to the Piedmont Electric Membership Corporation in the amount of $25,000 to provide technical assistance in applying for the CAB program and to potentially comply with the math requirement for the Great Grant Round 2 applications. So I have been made aware that we're in the running for the Great Grant Round 2 application process. So no need for motions and accepting that. We won't know. I'll let you know after we get that or whether or not we get it within the coming months. I do want to let you know that we're also looking at moving our meetings back to the historic courthouse for the time being. Maintenance went and did some work, knocked a lot of the pieces down, removed some of the plaster that we were fearful of falling. So I think we're in a place to where we can move back to the historic courthouse, maybe short-lived, because after we get people in to start working the ceiling, we may have to move back down.
What is the status?
So we worked with Dewberry to provide us some engineering and structural data. They're also working with some of their contractors to take a look at it. After that process is complete, we'll bring the results back to the board and then we'll bid it out. So, but we are working with Dewberry. So that I also have, we planned, or NCACC has planned their annual conference, August 24th through the 26th. And is that in Charlotte? Okay, it's in Wake County. It'll be in Wake County. That's an educational conference for elected officials to go to. So I would encourage you, if you want to attend that, please let our clerk know. Probably no later than the end of this week, Carla. It is in August, but those rooms fill up really, really quickly. So if you could, let our clerk know if you plan to attend.
Do you know what they'll be covering?
Do you know the exact dates? Well, it's the 24th through the 26th.
No, what will they be covering, like topics? What?
Oh, I don't have the agenda for it. I always know that it's the highlighted conference for elected officials every year within North Carolina. They always have a lot of good speakers, a lot of good topics covered. They're relevant topics for today's environment. But Carla, can we send out the agenda if we can get our hands on it? That'll be emailed to each board. So the last thing I have, members, is, as most of you know, we're scheduled for a meeting on July 3rd, which falls on July 4th week. For the last several years, Carla, we have traditionally not had that meeting because we, I mean, you have a lot of meetings leading up to that meeting, budget work sessions, so on and so forth. So, it's pleasure of the board whether you want to continue with that meeting or not.
The meeting be moved.
Pardon?
The meeting be moved.
It can be rescheduled to a different date.
What type of agenda do you see for that meeting if we had it? Is there a lot on there? Can it be reallocated to the meeting afterwards, or what are we looking like?
So Carla's shaking her head. There's not a lot on there, and we don't have a lot to go over that meeting. And yes, it can. He said yes, it could be moved to the next meeting.
Just one vote on the board. What's the pleasure of the board on? What do you
Make a
think?
motion that we skip the July 3rd meeting.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
And a motion and a second to skip that meeting. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
And that's all I have.
Upcoming events and announcements, we have July 3rd at committee. Yep, that's just been canceled. July 17th, 2023 commissioner meeting, 6:30 p.m. Is that going to be at the library or back at the courthouse?
We'll have that back at the courthouse.
Okay, so strike the library part, going to the courthouse for that meeting, August 24th and 26th, 2023 NCACC annual conference. And with that said, the last item on the agenda is a closed session to consult with attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged. NCGS 143-318-11A3.
And Mr. Chairman, there is a case that I'm going to speak about that is Caswell County Superior Court Case 23 CVS 129. And the parties involved in that are Edward Daughtery, Dawn Daughtery, Marcia McNally, Teresa Newman, Charles Klopfelter, and Elizabeth Norman versus Caswell County Watershed Review Board, and Caswell County and Carolina Sunrock LLC and E-Tree LLC.
Okay, we have closed session up. We have a
Motion, we go in closed session.
have a second. Heard all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now closed session.